It's the very early hours of D-Day, and a small group of British paratroopers have secured control of two critically important bridges after a daring glider assault. Now, surrounded by German forces, they have to hold it until reinforcements arrive. On the face of it, for Major John Howard and his company of airborne troops, the operation to seize the bridges had gone relatively smoothly. Both the Caen Canal and Orne River bridges had been secured within 10 minutes of landing, for the loss of only 2 men killed. But Howard's position was precarious. His small group of around 100 men were the only Allied combat unit ashore, surrounded by hostile territory and with more than 2 hours to go before any reinforcement by other airborne units could be expected. To make matters worse, Howard only had 5 of his 6 platoons in the bridge area as one of the gliders had gone missing, and 3 of his platoon commanders had become casualties during the assault. By 12:50 am, about half an hour after D Company captured the bridges, the drone of a seemingly endless number of transport aircraft was audible overhead. This was the start of the arrival of the rest of 6th Airborne Division, which was tasked with seizing ground east of the River Orne to protect the western flank of the D-Day landings. With thousands of friendly troops now dropping to his east, Major Howard opted to reshuffle his units, leaving only 1 platoon at the eastern Orne Bridge, while the other 4 dug in around the Caen Canal. Lieutenant Dennis Fox's 17 platoon were ordered to advance at the crossroads immediately to the west of the bridge and dig in, awaiting any German counterattacks. It did not take long after Fox and his men arrived in their new positions before they heard the unmistakable sounds of a tracked vehicle coming down the road from the north. Before we go on, I'd just like to thank today's sponsor, Rec Watches, and their Swiss-made watch made from the SR71 Blackbird. Rec is an independent watch brand from Denmark who make remarkable timepieces infused with materials reclaimed from cars, motorcycles and aircraft of historical significance. Today they've asked me to talk about their really cool limited edition Habu watch, which incorporates titanium that was actually part of an SR71 Blackbird. The Habu name comes from the nickname that SR71s had while based in Okinawa, named after a venomous pit viper native to the region. The lower dial of the Habu timepiece integrates authentic SR71 titanium, sourced from the aircraft's engine exhaust housing. These components were provided by Daniel Freeman, a former chief of metals technology who was directly involved in the SR71 program. The Habu's design also takes broader inspiration from the SR71, with a design reminiscent of aviation dials and hands in the shape of the Blackbird silhouette. The Habu is available exclusively at Rec Watches at the link in the description down below, and make sure to use the coupon code Historiograph for an extra 10% off. As the airborne troops strained their eyes in the gloom, they were able to see a captured French half-track moving towards them, with a PaK-36 anti-tank gun mounted on top of it. As it rolled forwards, just meters from the crossroads was Sergeant Charles Thornton, clutching the platoon's Piat anti-tank launcher. He waited for the vehicle to get within 30 yards and then fired. The Piat bomb punched through the front of the half-track and exploded. The vehicle stopped, and then after a few moments, a loud series of explosions started from within, as ammunition stored inside cooked off. For more than an hour, machine gun bullets, grenades and shells would explode inside the half-track, creating an almighty racket and encouraging troops all around to keep their heads down. Unnerved by the loud explosions coming from their lead vehicle, the rest of the German column swiftly concluded incorrectly that the bridges were defended by an anti-tank gun and retreated northwards, unwilling to press the attack any further. It would not have been obvious at the time, but Sergeant Thornton's well-aimed Piat had possibly just saved Pegasus Bridge. Had the Germans pressed a determined counterattack with infantry supported by armoured vehicles at this time, there would have been little to stop them from pushing onto and across the 2 bridges, isolating 6th Airborne Division east of the River Orne. While this was happening, at the other end of the 2 bridges near Ranville, the Germans were probing the defences, with a German patrol engaged and driven off with small arms fire, before Lieutenant Hugh Sweeney's 23 platoon also heard a tracked vehicle approaching at about 2:30 am. Like the attack to the west, it was a German half-track, but unlike the vehicle destroyed to the west, it sped into the British position at top speed, moving faster than the Piat could be brought to bear. Leading it was a German dispatch rider on a motorcycle. Seemingly oblivious to the fact that the bridge had been captured by Allied forces, the two vehicles then began to drive across it, while Sweeney's men pelted it with gunfire from both sides of the river. The motorbike was cut down first, crashing in a heap on the bridge, while the half-track made it to the other side before the driver was hit and killed through an open vision port and it swerved into a ditch. Sweeney's men ran over to the half-track and pulled another wounded German from it. This was Major Hans Schmidt, the officer responsible for the two bridges, who had come to see for himself if the reports of Allied glider landings were true. Schmidt was taken prisoner and dispatched to the company aid post to have his wounds bandaged. Not long after this incident, the first airborne reinforcements began to arrive at the Orne Bridge. It had been a traumatic drop, with troops scattered over a large area and much equipment going missing. Men of 7th Parachute Battalion were the first to arrive and began to make their way through D Company to strengthen the position west of the Caen Canal, while 12th Battalion behind them would take over the eastern bank of the River Orne. This would allow Major Howard and his men to pull back to the space between the two bridges to act as a reserve. Arriving along with 7th Battalion's HQ at this point was Lieutenant Richard Todd. Todd was an actor before and after the war, and he would actually go on to play Major Howard in the 1962 film The Longest Day, which dramatised the seizure of Pegasus Bridge. Not long before dawn, Major Howard called a meeting of his platoon leaders to prepare their new positions. It was the first time he had had a chance to appreciate the losses they had taken. Of his 6 platoons, only 3 were still being led by their original officers, with 2 corporals and a sergeant leading the others. Across the company as a whole, the seizure of the 2 bridges had cost 2 dead and 12 wounded from D Company. Considering the incredibly high risk they had faced, these were mercifully light numbers compared to what could have happened had the bridges been blown or one of the gliders shot down. But the Germans weren't quite finished with Pegasus Bridge just yet. After the sun rose at around 6 AM, D Company was soon under harassing sniper fire from unseen German stragglers, making movement on the bridges perilous. After a few hours of this, Private Wally Parr resolved to do something about it. Commandeering the German anti-tank gun which lay on the canal's eastern bank with a few others, he started to take aim at what he considered likely vantage points for enemy snipers. The water tower in the grounds of the Benouville chateau to the south was the first target and received 2 rounds before Parr moved on to the top floors of the chateau itself. After 3 more rounds had been fired, Major Howard realised what was happening and came across to hastily order the private to stop firing at what he knew to be an active maternity hospital. The arrival of daylight also brought the sound of the Allied naval bombardment beginning to the west. It was a morale-boosting sign for the Paras that their relief was not far away. But before the seaborne troops could get established, at 9 AM 2 German patrol boats approached from the north, sailing up the Caen Canal from Ouistreham. These were the Otto Brohan and Friedrich Buser, making an improvised attempt to attack the bridge. As soon as the lead vessel got in range, it was attacked by small arms fire, and then Lance Corporal Claude Godblood raised 24 Platoon's Piat anti-tank weapon and fired. The projectile struck home on the ship's wheelhouse and exploded. The boat swung to port and ploughed into the bank. The crew were swiftly taken prisoner as the second boat swung around and made a hasty retreat. It was a remarkable little episode. The next time that a handheld anti-tank rocket would be used against an enemy naval vessel would be in 1982 on South Georgia, when the Argentine corvette Guerrico was disabled by a Royal Marine in the same manner. An hour after the aborted naval assault on the bridge, the final German attempt to knock it out was made, when a lone Focke-Wulf 109 appeared overhead and dropped a single bomb, which struck the bridge, failed to explode, and bounced off into the canal. It was a big slice of luck, which combined with the skill and courage that day was enough to ensure that Pegasus Bridge remained firmly in Allied hands when the first troops from Sword Beach began to arrive after 1 PM. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to check out the Habu SR71 Blackbird watch at the link in the description and use the code HISTORIOGRAPH for 10% off.